Welcome back. In this pair of videos, I'll discuss the way the Latin language was pronounced. As you can see, the Latin alphabet is the one that we still use, but a couple of our letters are missing. The letter J was invented to describe the sound of the Latin letter I in front of another vowel or at the beginning of a word. The letters U and V were a single letter to the Romans, which was always written with a point. And the letter W was later invented to describe the sound this letter made in front of a vowel or at the beginning of a word. Now, as we'll see, there are long and short versions of the 5 main vowels in Latin: A, E, I, O, and U. But aside from that, the letters in this alphabet are always pronounced in the exact same way, and there are no silent letters. Let's look at the vowels. The Latin word for vowels is vocales. It's the source of the English word vocal, because these are the sounds that you make with your voice. As you can see, Latin vowels come in long and short versions, which we could also describe as open and closed. The dashes that appear over the 5 long vowels indicate that these should take a little longer to say. This gives you time to open your mouth a little wider and produces a slightly different sound. Let's compare these sounds, starting with the letter A, the long version of which sounds like the ah in father. You open your mouth very wide to make this sound, which is why the doctor asks you to make it when he wants to look at the back of your throat. Say ah. If you make this same sound without opening wide, you end up with the short sound we find in English words like ago, idea. Now, nobody makes this sound for a long time, which is why we call this a short vowel. If you stretch this sound out, it sounds dumb. The long version of the Latin letter E sounds like the English name for the letter A. We make this sound in words like pray and they, and if you pay close attention, there's a slight E sound at the end of it, which we sometimes represent using the letter Y. This will be more noticeable when we combine this letter with other vowels below. When we make this long A sound, we open the back of the mouth wide and a little bit to the side. If we make this same sound without doing this, we end up with the short E sound we find in words like pet and bet. The long version of the Latin letter I sounds like the English name of the letter E. It's the sound this letter makes in the English word machine. Making this sound involves stretching the front of your mouth out to the sides, which is why people ask you to make it when they want to take your picture. Say cheese. And if you're not that enthusiastic about getting your picture taken, you'll end up with the short I sound that we find in English words like bit and fit. Now, the long O sound is round, just like the letter. It's the open sound we make in the word hope. Now, the short version of this round sound is the we find in English words like often and opportunity. Finally, if we push this rounded shape to the front of the mouth, we get the long oo sound we find in English words like rude and dude. And if we shorten this sound in this forward position, we end up with the we find in words like put and foot. So, to recap, the long and short version of these 5 Latin vowels are as follows, and feel free to sing along. A, E, I, O, U. Now, once we start reading actual Latin words and sentences, the distinction between long and short vowels will fall into place very naturally. You really won't have to think about this until you try to read Latin poetry, which is totally organized around patterns of long and short syllables. Something you will have to pay careful attention to as we begin our readings are these vowel combinations, which linguists refer to as diphthongs. The term comes from 2 Greek words, duo meaning two and thongos meaning sound, and it's used to describe the transition between two vowel sounds that can occur within a single syllable. Most of these vowel combinations occur in English words, but we don't always use two letters to represent them. Let's start with the combination A-E. As we've seen, the Latin letter A says ah, and the Latin letter E says A. The faster I move from this ah sound to this A sound, the more it's going to sound like the letter I in the English word bite. Ah, A, I. Since the letter I can be used to represent this sound in English, we sometimes don't know what to do when we see this combination of letters in a Latin word. Your world history teacher will tell you that this man's name is Julius Caesar. In my next video, I'll tell you that the C always sounds like a K in Latin. But today we've learned that we should pronounce the letters A-E exactly as written. Caesar, Caesar. Several of you noticed this word on my whiteboard map of the Roman world and pointed out that by removing the initial A and the final US, you get the English name for the country of Egypt. Now you know that by pronouncing all the letters correctly, we get the Roman pronunciation of this country, Aegyptus. We frequently drop the first letter of a diphthong when we bring a Latin word into English. Knowing this, you can easily recognize that the Latin words aequalis and aeternalis mean equal and eternal. I'll go through the rest of these combinations very quickly because they all work in exactly the same way. If the letter A says A and U says U, then the combination A-U sped up gives us the sound ow, like when you stub your toe or talk about a cow. If E says A and I says E, then the combination A gives us the sound that Fonzie makes, which is to say the A in they. The sound combination eu doesn't occur in English, but we do find it in the Romance languages, for example in the Spanish deuda, which means debt. Many Greek words begin with this combination of letters, words like euphoria and euthanasia. When we bring these words into English, we write both letters, but we only pronounce the U. The same rule applies to the word Europa, which of course comes into English as Europe. The combination oi does occur in English in words like soil and oil and boil. Greek and Latin words that begin with this diphthong typically come into English without the initial O. That's how oikonomia becomes economy. Now, the Latin language contains a very large number of words that begin with the letters QU. When these letters are followed by the letter I, we get a diphthong that sounds like ui. This we also find in English, spelled with a U in the word queen or spelled with a W as in the word between. This brings us to the letter Y, which as you know is only sometimes a vowel in English. It's always a vowel in Latin, and it only occurs in words borrowed from Greek. The name of the letter Y in the Romance languages reveals its Greek origin. In French you call it Y, which means Greek E. In Spanish, Y, which means the same thing. Now, we don't have this sound in English. It's somewhere between the E in machine and the U in rude. It sounds like I. So, in French, the pronoun that means you is pronounced tu, right? Tu as déjà vu ça. You already saw this. In German, if you speak German, it's the umlaut. It's the U with the two little dots over it as in the word über. Now, don't be concerned if you find it difficult to pronounce this. I kind of suspect that the Romans struggled with this one too, because it wasn't originally a part of their language and will only come across it in foreign-sounding words. So this brings us to the end of our discussion of the vowel sounds in Latin. In the next video, I'll talk about the consonants, but only the ones that sound different than they do in English. Until then, y'all stay safe.